At 6:42 a.m., I stepped onto my dock with a coffee, and saw Karen standing knee-deep in the lake, screaming into her phone. That was my lake now. She didn't know yet, but she was about to. If you've ever had a neighbor who thought the world revolved around her, hit subscribe, because this isn't just petty revenge. This is how you legally erase entitlement. It started with a lake. Technically, a marshy runoff zone that no one had touched in years, except for Karen. She had lived beside it for over a decade, calling it her view, though it wasn't on her property. Every morning, she'd do yoga on a dock she built without permits, facing the misty water like some queen surveying her kingdom. I moved in next door 2 months ago, inheriting my late uncle's fixer-upper cabin. I didn't care about the lake at first, but when Karen warned me not to fish in her waters, something in me flipped. I tried to play nice, once. I offered to help her clean up some invasive weeds along the shore. She waved me off like I was a trespasser. Then came the notes. Little papers taped to my door, no lawn clippings near my lake. Do not let your dog drink from the water. My dog is 14. Blind in one eye. He wobbles when he walks. Karen didn't care. She accused him of disturbing the ecosystem. The lake had become her personality, and I was public enemy number 1. It escalated fast. She reported me to the HOA for excessive leaf blowing and verbal intimidation. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. The HOA sent me warnings, then fines. They wanted $250 for unauthorized shoreline use. The kicker? Karen wasn't even on the board, but she acted like she owned it. I tried calling the HOA president. Voicemail. The HOA website didn't even list current officers. That's when I started digging. County land records, old survey maps, anything I could find. And what I found changed everything. The lake wasn't HOA property. It wasn't owned by Karen. It wasn't owned by anyone. The previous owner of my land had abandoned the parcel decades ago. But the legal access remained. That meant I had the right to bid when the county posted it for sale during a quiet tax auction. No one else bid. Not even Karen. She didn't even know it was happening. I bought the entire 3.8-acre lake for $1,700 plus filing fees. And I did it under an LLC. Quietly. Legally. Completely. 3 days after the paperwork cleared, I walked down to the water and posted signs, private property. No trespassing. I didn't expect the scream I heard from Karen's yard that morning. She had seen the sign. Her precious lake, her dock, her yoga mat, her birdbath stones, all sat on land she no longer had rights to use. She charged over, red-faced and shaking, demanding I take it down. I handed her a copy of the deed. She stared at it like it was in another language. Then she stormed off, muttering something about calling the county. 2 hours later, I had 2 code enforcement officers at my door. Karen had filed a complaint, illegal fencing, disturbance of waterline, unregistered business activity. I showed them my permits. They apologized. One actually laughed when I explained what I bought. People like that always think they own the water, he said. As they left, Karen stood on her dock with arms crossed, waiting for them to arrest me. When they didn't, her face dropped. That's when the real meltdown began. The next morning, she played her final card. A massive HOA meeting, emergency session, 8 a.m., hosted on Zoom. I logged in just in time to hear her ranting about environmental violations and corporate trespassers. She called me the lake thief. When I finally spoke, I shared the full screen and uploaded the deed, the sale documents, the county approval, and the list of unused HOA fees that made the whole thing possible. Silence. Then laughter. From other members. Because it turned out, everyone hated Karen. I ended the call with one sentence. If Karen wants a view, she can pay me $500 a month for access rights. That was generous. I could have blocked her entirely. But I wanted her to squirm. That night, someone drove by and egged her car. I don't condone it, but I understood it. She'd ruled this block like a tyrant for years. Now she was learning the cost of fake power. And I was just getting started. The next week, I rented a backhoe. Not for show, for defense. Karen had escalated. After losing access to her lake, she began trespassing anyway, jogging the perimeter like she was still queen. When I put up a temporary rope barrier, she ducked under it. So I upgraded. I ordered 8 used shipping containers, rusted but solid, from a salvage yard 80 miles away. The driver raised an eyebrow when I gave the delivery instructions. "You building a fortress?" I smiled. "Exactly." He laughed. But I wasn't joking. Karen didn't need a view. She needed a boundary she couldn't ignore. I spent 2 days lining the containers along the property edge that faced her house. Perfect symmetry. They blocked her sight line to the lake entirely. Each container stood 8 feet tall, stacked end to end like iron dominoes. No paint, no camouflage, just pure industrial defiance. When Karen came outside that evening for her usual yoga session, she gasped so loud I heard it from inside. She didn't speak. She just stared, clutching her mat like a hostage. That night, she left a note taped to my door. It said 3 words, "You'll regret this." The following morning, I received a cease and desist letter. Not from her lawyer. Karen didn't have one. From the HOA's legal office, signed by a compliance chair. They claimed I violated neighborhood aesthetic values and sightline harmony. I laughed out loud. Then I read further. They were threatening fines. $500 per week unless I removed the containers. But they made a mistake. One fatal assumption. They thought my lake purchase meant I was under their jurisdiction. I wasn't. My land, and the lake, were legally outside the HOA boundaries. They hadn't updated their own plat maps in 14 years. So I called their bluff. I wrote a formal response, attached my deed, and included a copy of the county zoning map with highlighter marks. I ended the letter with one line: "Any attempt to fine me will be treated as fraudulent extortion and reported to the state licensing board." I sent it certified mail. 2 days later, I got a phone call. Not from Karen, but from the HOA president. A man named Tom, who sounded exhausted. "She told us you were in violation. I didn't know you weren't even in our HOA." That call changed everything. I explained what had happened. How Karen had hijacked the HOA into thinking she controlled access, how she filed false reports, and how I'd complied with every regulation applicable to my actual zoning. Tom sighed. "She's been a problem for years. But she's loud. People let her run wild because they don't want to deal with her." He asked me what I wanted. I said, "I want my peace. And I want her to stop lying." He agreed. 3 days later, Karen was suspended from the board, pending review. But she didn't stop. Not Karen. That weekend, she invited a drone pilot to fly over my yard. I saw the buzzing craft from my living room. It hovered 40 feet above the containers, trying to peek in. I called the sheriff. Turns out, filming someone's private property with a drone without consent is a violation in our county, especially if you're using it to harass. Karen wasn't cited, but the pilot was warned, and I filed a formal complaint. It wouldn't stick, but it built the record. One more incident. That's all I needed. So I gave her the opportunity. I moved my old smoker grill, massive, black, and oddly shaped, right behind the containers. To anyone nosy, it looked like a diesel tank or maybe a chemical drum. I knew Karen couldn't resist. 2 days later, she called the fire marshal claiming I was storing fuel illegally. They arrived, inspected the grill, and asked where the fuel was. I opened it. Just charcoal. The marshal chuckled. She again? He asked. He'd been by twice already. Yep, I said. He shook his head and left. But now I had her voice on the 911 call. That recording? Gold. Proof of repeated false reports. I took it to the county HOA oversight board. I didn't go in angry. I went in polite. Focused. I showed them the drone complaint, the false fire call, the cease and desist threat, and the zoning maps. I laid it out like a prosecutor. The board took notes. One lady said, "I've had enough of her too." I left that meeting without a promise, but I knew something had shifted. Karen wasn't untouchable anymore. Her reign of intimidation had drawn too much heat. And the best part? My containers became art. I hired a local muralist, young guy, tattooed, quiet. I gave him a week and a budget. He painted scenes of local wildlife on every panel. Herons, foxes, snapping turtles. Karen hated it. She screamed about graffiti, while I quoted county arts grants. The mayor's office even shared a photo on Facebook. Creative use of reclaimed materials, they wrote. Karen couldn't stand it. I watched her standing in her yard, fists clenched, as neighbors strolled by and complimented my installation. Revenge wasn't just legal, it was beautiful. It started with paint. A thin red line sprayed onto the ground on Karen's side of the fence, right along the edge where my container wall cast a long afternoon shadow. I noticed it one evening while trimming the grass near the boundary. At first, I thought it was a utility marker, but there was no scheduled work. 2 days later, fresh orange flags appeared, then a small survey crew. When I asked what they were doing, one of them shrugged. Just rechecking property lines. Client's request. I already knew the client's name. Karen wasn't backing down. She was escalating. Turns out, Karen hired a private surveyor to prove that my newly constructed fence was 6 inches into HOA jurisdiction. 6 inches. I laughed when I read her formal complaint. But the HOA wasn't laughing. They emailed me, citing encroachment concerns. I responded with my own survey, a county-registered map showing the fence squarely inside my property. Then I included one more document, a signed affidavit from the original property owner confirming the fence posts had been in the same position since the 1980s. Karen's argument collapsed faster than her composure on a hot HOA Zoom call. After that failed, she switched tactics. She began calling code enforcement. First it was abandoned metal structures, the containers, then illegal fencing, then improper drainage. Each time, someone came by. Each time, I had permits, photos, and legal documents ready. One inspector muttered, "You've got everything in order." Honestly, it's impressive. It became routine. I kept a folder by the door labeled, "Karen Attacks." Every call she made just added more pages. Eventually, the county clerk flagged her as a nuisance filer. But Karen didn't care. Her war was emotional now, not logical. Then came the gate incident. I'd installed a new metal gate at my main driveway. Strong, motorized, with a keypad entry. One morning, I found it bent, rammed from the outside, like someone tried to force it open with a vehicle. The paint transfer? Pearl white. Just like Karen's SUV. I called the sheriff again. He examined the damage, took photos, and sighed. "You know she'll deny it." I nodded. "Yeah, but she's losing control." I installed cameras that afternoon. 3 angles, night vision, live cloud upload. Karen was officially on candid camera. The footage came in handy sooner than expected. Just 3 nights later, at 2:17 a.m., the system pinged my phone. Motion at the gate. I opened the app and watched, wide-eyed, as Karen herself approached the fence in a bathrobe, holding a flashlight. She was taking measurements, writing them down. When the flashlight caught the camera lens, she froze. then bolted. I downloaded the footage, saved 2 backups, and emailed 1 copy to the HOA. No subject line. No commentary. Just the clip. The silence that followed was the loudest HOA silence I'd ever heard. But the retaliation came quietly. A week later, a landscaping crew showed up on my side of the property line. Karen had told them it was her land. They began cutting brush and even pulled down a corner section of my wildflower garden. I confronted the crew leader. He looked genuinely confused. Lady in the white SUV said it was HOA land. Showed a map and everything. I told them to stop immediately. Then I called my attorney. That was the final straw. Karen had crossed from harassment into property damage. On record. We filed a restraining order and a civil claim. My lawyer was methodical, cold, and efficient. He didn't just include the gate video and the landscaping trespass. He compiled everything. Every 911 call, every drone complaint, every fake survey claim. It was a binder over 3 inches thick. We served Karen the documents on a Sunday morning, just as she was stepping out to check her mail. She looked at the envelope, then at me. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. I didn't smile. "You already dared first." Within a week, HOA members started distancing themselves from her. One resigned. Another sent me a message, "I'm sorry for how far she took this." Most of us didn't agree with her. The HOA removed her from all official communications. No more board access. No more authority. But Karen wasn't done. Her house went dark for 3 days. No cars moved. Curtains drawn. Then, a real estate sign appeared in the yard. "For sale by owner." She was leaving, but she wasn't going quietly. On her final night, she stood on her porch at 10 p.m., yelling across the property line. Not words, just noises. Anger. Frustration. Like she needed the land to feel her rage one last time. I didn't answer. I didn't step outside. I just watched the cameras. That was the last I saw of her. 2 months later, a young couple moved in. They brought cookies, asked about the lake, complimented the mural on the containers, and never once mentioned Karen. I thought it was over. Karen was gone, her house sold, and peace had returned like a long-forgotten breeze through the pines. But HOA politics, like mold, tend to linger in the cracks. 2 months after Karen vanished from the neighborhood, the new president of the HOA, Rick, a smug retiree with a wine cellar and too much free time, sent a registered letter. "Visual obstruction complaint," it read. Apparently, my container wall didn't match the aesthetic integrity of the community. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Karen may have left, but her war lived on, reborn in committee minutes. They scheduled a mandatory compliance hearing at the clubhouse. I showed up with 2 things, my property deed and a photo of Karen's white SUV inches from my bent gate. The room was full, Rick at the head, a few HOA loyalists beside him, and neighbors in folding chairs. I expected hostility, but what I got was curiosity. People whispered, passed glances, even smiled. When Rick tried to read the complaint, someone from the back interrupted. "Is this about the fence Karen lied about?" The spell cracked. HOA drama fatigue had set in across the block. I took the opportunity to speak. Calmly, firmly, I laid out everything, again. How Karen's campaign began, how it escalated, how she damaged my gate, sent fake surveyors, and weaponized county codes. I even projected the security footage. The room was silent except for the clip's audio. Karen breathing heavy, startled by the flash of the infrared lens. Then her retreat. When it ended, I looked around. "I didn't build a fortress," I said. "I built a shield. Because one of your leaders attacked me." No one had anything to say after that. The complaint disappeared. So did Rick's grin. But even with the formal challenges gone, scars remained. My wife started parking behind the containers instead of by the driveway. The neighbors waved more now, but there was always a pause, like they wondered if I might one day build a watchtower too. One morning, I caught myself checking the camera feeds before opening the blinds. Not out of fear, just habit. The kind of quiet vigilance that grows in the soil Karen poisoned. I had won the battle, but it had changed me. Then, one Sunday morning, I heard a knock. Not a sheriff. Not an inspector. A young girl, maybe 9, holding a drawing. "My mom said you're the guy who built the big wall," she said. I smiled. "That's me." She handed me the paper. It was a crayon sketch of my containers, with little flowers around them and a sun smiling in the corner. "I think it's cool." Her mom waved from the sidewalk. I waved back. That single moment, pure, unfiltered, felt like a healing stitch in everything Karen had torn. Inspired, I decided to repaint the wall. Not cover it, but transform it. A mural, bright, surreal, alive. I hired a local artist. Over 2 weeks, shapes bloomed across the metal. Animals, rivers, abstract dreams. People stopped by, complimented it, took photos. HOA couldn't complain. No rules against beautification on private land. The containers that once symbolized division now became art. Community kids added touches. Handprints, initials, butterflies. Karen's eyesore had become the neighborhood's most talked about landmark. It was a message. I'm still standing. And now, I'm building something better. Months passed. Then one evening, I got a letter. Not from the HOA. From Karen. It was typed. Cold. She'd heard from a mutual contact about the mural, the hearing, the fact that her crusade had failed. No apology. Just a single line that stuck with me. "You should have never had the land in the first place." I stared at the sentence. Not out of anger, but pity. She still thought it was about ownership. About boundaries. She never understood. The land was just dirt. The real fight was about dignity. And she lost that the moment she picked it. I never replied. What would be the point? Her war had ended in exile, her own doing. But I did keep the letter. Framed it, even. Hung it inside the gate shack. Not as a trophy, but a reminder of how far some people will go just to control what they don't own, and how sometimes the best revenge is simply outliving their influence. Today, my fence still stands, stronger than ever. Not a barricade, but a canvas. My wife gardens again. Neighbors pass through the gate with cookies or questions about the mural. And me? I sleep without checking the cameras now. The wall that Karen tried to destroy became the monument to her failure, and to my endurance. The HOA has gone quiet. For now. But if the next Karen rises, I'm ready. The land taught me how to fight smart. And next time, I won't just build a wall. I'll build a legacy.